This is the Show Up Show, helping coaches, service providers, leaders, and entrepreneurs to master showing up to build their brand, authority, and grow their business. Whether it's showing up on social media, in front of an audience, on a live interview, or an actual stage, this podcast is going to help you overcome visibility fear to confidently brand yourself as the authority in your industry. I'm Joyan Chan, aka the Confidence and Visibility Queen, and I am on a mission to share how I went from a nobody to the confident leader I am today, what I have learned and what I have done to build my brand and business from scratch, and help you do the same so that you can make an impact in the world with the meaningful work that you do. Whether you are new to the business world or feeling unsure about public visibility, or you want to be seen and heard in a way that doesn't feel icky but authentic to you, you will discover how to become visible in your own unique way and show up as the confident entrepreneur you have always dreamed about becoming. Now, it's time to get you show up and be confidently visible so you can easily attract more clients and opportunities for yourself. Joining us today, she has been in the podcasting industry since 2016, helping coaches, authors, and influencers launch and grow their podcasts and expand their business. She brings a unique, personalized approach through utilizing coaching tools to help bring alignment, purpose, and intention to their podcasts. She also hosts two of her own podcasts, Holistic Podcasting for Podcasters and Holistic Hearts, a podcast to help people encounter the heart of Jesus through the art of using our imagination. So, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcoming the podcasting queen, Kristin Chadwick.
Thank you. That was a very nice, warm welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so my first question is, I also have two podcasts, as I told you. And this is a question that many people ask me, like, Joyan, why do you need two podcasts? So I'm going to ask you the same question as well. Why do you have two podcasts?
Why do I have two podcasts? Well, one started because back in 2020, I was told over and over again, Kristin, you need to start a podcast and share what has been going on in your life and what you have learned. And I think it will benefit so many people. So it actually wasn't even my idea. I just loved writing about it. And then more and more people kept asking for me to start a podcast. So I was like, all right, here we go. I'm going to try something new and challenging and use my voice audibly instead of written out. And so I started that podcast, and it was so much joy in that of being able to share all of the things that had happened in our life and the things that we were learning. And in the process of that, I had, in my business side of things, I had left one podcast as a solo producer. I helped build their podcast for about 4 years before that. And as soon as I left there, started my podcast, then more people kept asking, hey, could you help me start a podcast? How do you grow a podcast? How do you get to the top 10? How do you get to the top 25? And so it just kept coming in over and over again. And so I thought to myself, well, if I have a business around podcasting, I should probably have a podcast about podcasting. So then in 2021, I started my second show, Holistic Podcasting. And all of that to say, that is why there's two, because one was really just a process and an outpouring of what was happening in my heart, in my family, in my faith. And then the other one was more business and how to support the people that were coming to me asking questions. So both were fulfilling a beautiful need. Yeah.
I love that because that's the reason why I started mine as well. I mean, like my second podcast, exactly the same, right? My first podcast is about joy, finding joy, and because it was my I'm inspired by my own journey because I actually went through depression. That was like years ago and before COVID, and why I started podcasting, why I become a coach, it was because of that, like my origin story. So starting a podcast is easy, right? We can start two podcasts, we can start three podcasts. But what is your, I would say, best practice for growing a podcast?
Oh man, this is like the top question, right?
Yeah.
Where we are trying to see what is actually going to move the needle forward. And I just recorded a podcast about this where I was looking at the podcast marketing trends
Mm.
survey that just came out. So they interviewed over 500 podcasters in all different levels. So it could be somebody who's been podcasting for 7 years to somebody who's been podcasting for a year. It could be a sample size of their audience is, they have 100,000 downloads versus somebody who has 1,000 downloads per episode. So it was really fascinating to read the response of what was the most important factor in growth was actually social media was by far the top thing was promoting on social media, whether that was Instagram, Facebook, Twitter actually was pretty high,
Okay.
and LinkedIn, which was kind of shocking. And TikTok was on there, but I think that's an age range. Yeah, so that was really interesting. And then the second growth factor was purely being on other people's podcasts. So getting in front of new audiences, really bringing value to people that are doing similar things like we are here, where I can offer a different perspective and you could offer a different perspective to my audience. And that just opens up a whole new door. So those two go hand in hand, promoting on social media and also being on other people's shows.
Hmm. I guess it's not a rocket science, right? I mean, like we all know what to do, but it's my favorite saying: we all know what to do, but we don't do what we know. Uh,
Right.
the reason is because we are being held back by all the fears, could be imposter syndrome or could be I'm not good enough. Like, who am I to start a podcast? Who am I to go on other people's show, right? Who am I? So, okay, let's talk about the mindset because I feel like this is what really is holding a lot of people back in podcasting. Especially when it comes to starting a podcast. So how do we get rid of, I think the number one I would say is imposter syndrome. And
Mhm.
sometimes I still suffer from imposter syndrome, right? I'm not perfect, right? Although I've been podcasting, but sometimes when I have like a big guest, I'll be like, oh my God, you know?
Yeah.
So how do we get rid, or I would say maybe we couldn't really get rid of it, but how do we cope with imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I love this question. This is one of the most pivotal, I think, catalyst moments for podcasters. And so I have a program where I will walk brand new podcasters through the process of getting your episode 1 out there. It's an 8-week thing. And
Wow.
usually by week 3 is where that common question of who am I to start a podcast? Like it starts getting real of, okay, I said yes. And now I'm about to press record. And now the mindset chatter starts to go in. And you're right, it totally is imposter syndrome. So I love sharing the story of one of the first times I took a group of women through that process instead of one-on-one. This one gal in our Zoom call just kept hitting this wall of who am I? Who am I? And it was so clear how to break through with her was simply, yep, who are you? And she kind of got like, huh, like, wait, what? And I was like, yeah, I want you to answer that. Who are you? Because honestly, it's who you are of why you should be using your voice and sharing your story, because underneath that is your voice.
Yeah.
And so she started, processing out loud of, okay, well, I'm a mom, I'm a wife to a firefighter. I love spreading acts of kindness. And she started going through this process of like, yes, exactly. That is who you are. And you are going to speak to somebody who wants to hear from somebody like you.
Mm.
And that is the beginning of really getting clear on our own identity of, okay, I have walked through this story. I have walked through this, whatever it is, cancer treatment. I have walked through a divorce. I have walked through a special needs kid. I have walked through and in my own story and healed from trauma or whatever. And all of those are beautiful, unique points of your thumbprint of what you're bringing to the table. And so it is part of your podcast identity. And yes, we can shift from like us where we have two different podcasts, but our identity is the same in both, right? We both are bringing our own personal identity into both of them. So by far, asking the question of, yes, who am I to start a podcast is one way that we can absolutely turn that around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
I
is
can keep going, but I would love for you to
well,
talk.
I want you to keep going. I mean, that is beautiful and so empowering because yeah, exactly. Like, who are you, right?
Mhm.
It's just as simple as asking yourself the question and answering that. Now, I also have one girl, and she's like into my DM and asking me a question like, Jen, I really want to start a podcast, but I'm not sure if I have enough to say.
Mm.
And I was
That's
like, oh my God, I didn't know that because I'm someone who is quite talkative. I always have something to say. But I don't know someone else, like, they are struggling with, like, do I have enough to say? Do I have enough to offer? How do you help people discover their own voice?
yeah. So it really is that process. It is discovering your voice. So I so relate to that because when I worked for another producer or another podcast for those 4 years, I was the content creator. And it was like the easiest job because I got to create for somebody else and I had endless material coming in. Then when they were like, Kristin, you need to go start your own podcast, I was like, but wait, I don't have enough to say.
Wow.
And that was really interesting because I did have a lot to say. I just didn't have the confidence that I knew what I knew, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I didn't have the framework of really digging in my own brain and trusting in myself that I had something to offer to the table. And yes, it does kind of coincide with imposter syndrome, but I think there's almost like these are like the legs
Yeah.
of working out your identity. So getting clear on, and even having somebody ask questions, that was what was so helpful for me. Coming alongside and coaching, like, what have you walked through? Who comes to you regularly and asks you questions? What are those things that you love to talk about and you could talk about at a drop of a dime? Really finding who they are called to serve and then what are their problems and how can you solve that. So getting really focused and asking those questions will start to mine for the gold. Um, so I am naturally an introvert. So when people ask me questions, it's helpful for me to pull it out and start to process a little bit more and a little bit more. Or it could be giving them a pen and paper and being like, all right, I'm going to give you 30 minutes to just brain dump all of the ideas that you have and let's expand from that. Because everybody has content. It's more of just pulling it out and revealing what's already in them.
After hearing from what you just said, I think it's more on the I'm not good enough or unworthiness, instead of imposter syndrome, right? Because as to be honest, right, as especially women, we suffer with not being good enough, right? Since young, right? I'm not beautiful enough, I'm not quiet enough, I'm not smart enough. So yeah, I mean that's not our fault, right? To have this deep core belief of I'm not good enough. And this is why it's so crucial to have a coach like you, like me, right? Who knows what question to ask, right? If you can do it yourself, you would have done it yourself, right? This is why it's so crucial to hire a coach, whether it's a life coach, a podcasting coach, right? Or just a mindset coach, right? Who knows what question to ask and could really guide you through that process of understanding yourself and coming to the realization or the solution, the awareness of what's really holding you back and how to get over it, right? So I know your coaching is all about alignment, purpose, and intention. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So alignment is making sure we are aligned with who we are. So if your sweet person that DM'd you this question is asking, well, Do I do a co-host? Do I do a interview style? Do I do a solo episode every week? All of those things. We want to make sure that we are aligned with the strengths that we have in us and that it's actually going to feed the podcast and our listeners well. So if you have somebody who is only able to do, you know, every other week on their podcast episode, that's okay. Like, as long as it's consistent and they can do every other week, great. Like, that's alignment with your capacity in this season. It may not be forever, but making sure that we are aligned in that area, whether it is physically, mentally, in our business, spiritually, all of those things, we want to make sure that we are aligned. Purpose is really getting clear on our message, making sure that we are, again, it's that alignment with who we are, who we're called to serve, and what is that message, and getting really clear. So I love taking my people, and I'm sure in your conversations, it's getting that clarity of message, like the content pillars. I call it building a house. It's the framework. So we have to have an outline or some sort of plan as we're building this thing. I think there's too many people that start a podcast and they have no plan. It's just, I want to start a podcast. Well, I'm just going to talk about anything and everything, and it's going to go great, and there's going to be like a million listeners. And
Yeah.
like, this does not work, especially now as podcasting has become more and more popular. Not to say that your voice is not needed. It is absolutely needed, but you have to stand out and you got to be real clear on your message. So that is purpose. Intention, it feeds right into that. What is your intention?
Mm.
Where is your heart in all of this? And I'm big on your heart being the leader of all of this. I really think that people need to be seen, heard, and known. So your intentionality of every podcast interview that you do, every podcast that you sit down to record, that there's an intention. Like, I want to lead my people well. I want to give them the best podcast coaching I could give today. That means being intentional about researching the top things that are happening right now. That means being intentional about having a podcast mentor in your life. Like, that's an example for us. But say somebody is maybe they're a fitness coach and their intention is to probably have the same thing, have the latest research, having intention of, I want to serve 10 women in the next 12 weeks to help them to see their worth and move their bodies. I mean, like, that would be an example of an intention. So yeah, there you go.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Now, yeah, I'm a big fan of intention, though I probably should set more intention in my day-to-day life because I am a big fan of law of attraction and spirituality manifestation. I know it's all about setting an intention, right? But yeah, I keep on forgetting doing
Yes.
So
Nope.
I know you have been podcasting for so many years, and what are some of the most important lessons that you have learned personally over the past many years of podcasting?
Oh, that's a great question. Number one, I think, is showing your uniqueness. There's another great podcast coach that I'm totally going to steal this from her, but I'm shout out to Stephanie Gass. But she talks about how your uniqueness, like your weirdness, let it fly, because people really connect with that. I would say I used to really struggle with, okay, how much do I insert my quirkiness? Like, the people around me, they know that I have quirkiness. Like, I'll throw out random movie quotes and whatever, and make weird jokes. And now that is more and more into my podcast because I want that to be who people see. I want the same person that sits down at the mic to be the same person that if we walked up to each other, we would be the same person. So that would be number one. And that kind of goes side by side with a concept of not having a radio voice. So if I went out in public, I probably would be like, oh, hey, how's it going? We're here today because I'm going to go shop for my groceries. Like, that's such a different persona. I'd like having that persona through and through is really important to me, that authenticity. Yeah, gosh, I think the second thing I would say is patience.
Mm,
It's a process. It is a long game. It is a commitment. So when you start to podcast, there is a level of commitment of I'm in this for the long haul. Um, and I tell my podcasters, it's almost like a relationship where you got to walk through all of the seasons to really know what's working, what's not working. And as you go, you can take data and really let that inform how the next year could go or how the next season could go. I think just that patience in the process of growing your podcast. So, even going back to your first question of how do you grow a podcast,
yeah.
patience, patience and consistency over and over and over again.
Yeah. This is like consistency is the answer that I get all the time. Like whenever I ask this question, how do you grow a podcast? Consistency from all my guests. So this is, I'm telling you guys, there's no magic pills, there's no overnight success in podcasting, it's consistency.
Yeah.
And patience is what we don't often, is what we don't have, often. The reason why so many people quit is because, again, they don't see results right away in the first 3 months, right? And they quit.
Mhm.
But you have to keep going. Do you see podcasts as your business, or is a platform for you to share your voice, or do you see it as a marketing channel?
Yeah, that's a great question. I really see it as an opportunity for people to get to know me. I would love for people to come in slowly. Like, hey, what are you about? How do you teach podcasting? How do you approach launching a podcast? So, for me, with the podcasting, holistic podcasting, it is more about allowing people to get to know me, get to hopefully like me. If you don't like me, I guess you're not for me. To trust me.
Yeah.
And I mean, it is that no like trust factor. I love this guy, Jay Twining, came on my podcast and he gave this example of The Rock. And he was like, if you walk down the street and this big Samoan dude was walking past you and you didn't know who it was, and he approached you and he was like, oh, hey. And then you realize it was The Rock. And you're like, oh, I actually know you. And like, there's a switch in understanding, oh, I actually do know you. And there's story behind him, right? You're like, oh, it's The Rock. He's like this funny big dude on all these movies. And he was like, and it's the same thing with podcasting or marketing or social media. Like, you
Mm.
putting yourself out there is giving people context and story of who you are, which allows for an immediate, like, oh, I trust you with this product, with this podcast, with this information or coaching. And I thought that was a beautiful example because that's so true of just this opportunity to have people approach you in a soft way.
Yeah, I love that the analogy as well as story. It's all about putting yourself out there, right? Again, is if you're serious about making an impact, sharing your gift, right, and helping people, then you really got to put yourself out there. If not, these people, they wouldn't know you, they wouldn't like you and trust you, like you said, right? The know like trust that we all know. And podcasting, I would say, is the best medium at
Mm-hmm.
the moment to build a know like and trust factor,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Totally agree.
yeah, anything to add to that, or can I ask the last question?
Oh, go for it. Yeah. Keep going.
Okay. So my last question is about building a community, because I truly believe we cannot do life alone, let alone doing business alone. We need a community that believes in our vision, that wants to go on this journey together with us. So how do you build your own dream podcast community? How do you build a community around your podcast? So for instance, how we do it is I host a virtual podcast party every month for my community, bring my community together and on a specific topic in podcasting, right? And there's no selling, right? It's just us coming together to connect and support one another. So that's how I do it. I would love to hear about your unique approach.
Yeah, I love that you do that, that it's like a free community event. That's beautiful. So I have a few things. One is, so I have a membership. So for people that have walked through my launch program, I started this membership because I didn't want them to feel alone and to feel like, oh, I know that feeling, especially starting a podcast in 2020 when you're like, okay, so anybody out there? And that was like the number one thing that helped me was to find a group of women that we were all in this boat together of building a podcast. So in my own podcasting journey, I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to create that space for all of my people that go through my program to have like other community of like-minded podcasters who just started, who need the journey they need a coach during the journey. So I offer coaching, monthly coaching, and training and workshops as well. So, but that's mainly for my podcast members. Now, for myself, I am a huge advocate for collaborating with people who are in similar journeys. So, like, I've partnered with a couple of women this past fall for online summits to stay connected, to be a part of different communities, to spur me on, to spur them on. And that has been so helpful for me. Then I also have multiple coaches. So I have like my own podcast coach. I have a
Wow.
mastermind. I am not kidding that I love all the different relationships and connections because I really think without it, it's so easy to just be like, you know what? I don't think this is worth it.
Yeah, it's either I don't think this is worth it or this is working, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm so happy that you mentioned that you have like multiple coaches, mentors, because we all do. We all need to have someone in our life that sees us for who we really are, that believes in us, right? That we can really go and do some big things. Because one of the pivotal moments in my coaching journey is when I hired a mentor and he said something to me that really changed how I show up. Although,
Mhm.
I've been like very confident and I've already in my podcast, but the moment he said that to me, I was like, this changed my life. And I remember he said something like, funny, I can't remember what I said, but yeah, it said something like, I want to make you a success story. I was
Oh,
like, wow. Like,
mm,
imagine someone said that to you and that person truly wants you to succeed. Like,
yeah.
tell me what is the chance of succeeding? 100%,
Mhm.
right? Because
Mhm.
someone believes in you and he wants or she wants you to succeed. And so right now, as a coach, myself as a mentor, my motto is I want you to succeed, right? I will do whatever it takes. I will do everything in my power to help you succeed. And that's the kind of coach I am, right? So anyway, thanks for sharing. I feel like we all need someone in our life that believes in us. And again, so many people, they don't invest in coaching, they don't hire a mentor, they just want to figure it out themselves and do it yourself, which is fine. But eventually, you realize that it's not how it works, right?
Mhm.
Anything else you want to add before we wrap up this episode?
Hmm. Yeah, I think be brave, be bold. I think if you are either struggling with imposter syndrome or you don't know where to start, find Joyanne. I mean, just find somebody to help you get past the like hiccup of I don't know where to start and go for it because you absolutely have a voice and a message that somebody needs to hear. They're waiting for you to press record and to put it out onto Apple Podcast or Spotify. Um, yeah, just be brave. That's what I'm gonna say. Be brave, find people to connect with, to have a community because you're not alone. And yep, you absolutely deserve to be seen, heard, and known.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. You always find someone that is aligned with you, your values, your I like, because I'm attracted to certain type of people, right? And I'm sure you do, right? So maybe someone be like, Joyan is too loud for me. And Kristin, I feel more comfortable with her, right? I don't need to be everyone's mentor, like you said earlier, right? I don't need everyone to like me. If you like me, great. If you don't, it's fine. Right?
Mhm.
So just find your own mentor. There are so many out there, right? There's no competition, right? It's all about, like I said, it's all about collaboration. So thank you so much for coming. And thank you so much for sharing so beautifully in your journey, your experience, your expertise. Now, tell my listeners where they can find you online. What is the best place to connect with you?
Yeah, I would love to connect with you personally. I love hearing from people via email.
Mm.
You can email me at Kristin, Kristin, at KristinFieldsChadwick.com. And I'd love to hear from you there. And of course, you can find me on social media with the same name and on my podcast, Holistic Podcasting.
Awesome. All right, guys. I hope you learned a lot from today's episode on podcasting. And if you have any question or if you're watching this on YouTube, just leave a comment below. We'll get back to you. And like I said earlier, I host virtual podcast party for my community every once or twice a month. So you are invited, and it's a free event to come and hang out with me, my guests, my community. And it's a safe and empowering environment, and it's free. There's nothing for sale, right? There is a choice of dates and time for you to attend. So go to the show note below and you'll find all the link, all the resources, including Kristin link. I'll put all her links in the show note below. Go make sure you check it out and connect with us. All right, I hope to see you there. And until next time, keep showing up. Success doesn't show up for you until you show up and pursue your own success. Hi there, thanks for listening today, and I would love to meet you at our virtual dinner party. Once or twice a month, we come together as a community in a safe and empowering environment to help and support one another in our entrepreneurship journey. So what is a virtual dinner party? A VDP is not a networking event, it's not a teach event, and it's not a webinar where you don't get to talk. I want you to imagine the VDP being a cross between a mastermind, speed dating, and a Tony Robbins event. And most importantly, there is nothing for sale. My goal for you in attending our VDP is to help you build real confidence, gain more visibility for yourself, and build a deeper connection within our community. What is the catch? There isn't one. If you're a coach, consultant, entrepreneur, or podcaster, come and join us for a truly unique and world-class experience. And there is a choice of dates and times for you to attend. To RSVP, just send me a DM on Facebook with the word VDP now.